Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. In today's episode, we look at how 3 established dealers conducted a raid against their supplier and robbed a stash house of £1 million worth of product that belonged to a major Liverpool firm. With the Liverpool firm looking for the man, the gang thought they'd got away with the perfect crime. Little did they know the police were already onto them and had to move quickly to stop the gang. Stay tuned to find out about this violent robbery, how the police had inside knowledge, and why they had to get hold of this gang before they carried out an even more chilling crime. Early one spring morning in 2020, with the UK still in the grip of the first pandemic lockdown, a white van pulled up outside a semi-detached house in West Derby, a northeastern suburb of Liverpool. Inside the vehicle were 3 high-level drug dealers, brothers Jason and Craig Cox and Richard Caswell, as well as a low-level Cox henchman, Benjamin Monks Gorton. The group were armed with an axe, a machete, and other weapons. They were there to rob a house, but this was to be no ordinary break-in. Their target was a stash house on Croxdale Road West, used by one of the biggest crime groups in Merseyside, a firm which had in fact supplied the 3 dealers with wholesale quantities of cocaine. The robbery nearly went to plan. Monks Gorton, described by Jason Cox as a wool from Burnley, approached the front door in a high-vis jacket, posing as a delivery driver, with a COVID mask covering his face. His ruse proved unnecessary, as the door was already open, and the gang rushed inside. They all had hoods up and masks covering their faces. They couldn't risk being recognised. If they were, the consequences would be life-threatening. After barging their way inside, they were faced with a stunned father and son and launched a savage attack, stabbing, slashing, and dragging the 2 men around the property, leaving trails of blood on the walls and floors. The older occupant was severely wounded in the vicious attack, almost losing his arm, which was slashed down to the bone. The gang was shouting throughout the attack, "Where's the gear? Where's the gear?" and continued to beat the father and son and make grave threats against them. The dad told them it was under the stairs. One of the gang checked and shouted he'd got it, and they ran out with several sports bags loaded with drugs. After the gang left, at around 9:30 a.m. on May 23rd, the day of the robbery, the son called emergency services, telling the operator, "These lads just came into the house and started stabbing me dad, and there's blood everywhere." Luckily, an ambulance was in the area and managed to get the father to hospital in time to save his arm. When questioned, the father and son pleaded ignorance as to why they'd been targeted, and media reported the attack as a random home invasion, linking it to a general increase in burglaries, most of which the police struggled to solve. What the 2 victims failed to mention to authorities was that the attackers had left the scene with bags containing around 30 kilograms of cocaine, worth around £1 million, the criminal property of their fearsome bosses. Jason and Craig Cox, Caswell and Monks Gorton fled the scene and took their haul back to an address in Warrington. Some of the drugs were later supplied to Leon Atkinson, a one-time associate of the serial killer Dale Cregan. Messages between the Cox brothers and their henchmen showed a mix of trepidation and bravado about the seemingly successful heist. They'd come out with way more cocaine than they were expecting. Jason Cox, asking one of his henchmen, Michael Nevin, to move their share of the stolen cocaine, demanded silence. When Nevin messaged to confirm he was on his way to Jason Cox's address, he was warned that this has to be kept quiet and is not to be mentioned to anyone. The consequences would be dire if the slightest whisper of what had happened and the Cox's involvement got back to the firm who ran the stash house. Jason Cox also asked his brother Lee Cox whether he could help him rent a flat in case the Liverpool firm worked out they were behind the robbery. However, he also bragged, "I know where the main man lives. I'll empty a full clip in his face. Show them what time it is." Caswell was also playing a dangerous game. The Liverpool firm were desperately trying to work out who had ripped them off, and they asked him directly for information, saying they'd managed to get CCTV of the van used in the raid. They also told him they had video of a grey Audi, which had been used by Jason Cox to spy on the stash house in the days before the robbery. As expected, Caswell played dumb and said he would ask around, but passed on what they had told him to Jason Cox. Jason told Lee his traveller mate, meaning Monks Gorton, dropped his surgical mask in the house during the robbery. However, he added, "His face will be on CCTV, but he's from Burnley. No one will know him, he's at Wool." While the gang kept their fingers crossed that the ruthless firm they'd robbed did not suspect them, unexpectedly, the police already had a head start in the case, thanks to the hack of the EncroChat encrypted phone service. All three men used the expensive EncroChat phones to conduct their business. As is now well documented, that system was hacked by French authorities in early 2020, giving the police unrestricted access to all their messages. That information showed how Caswell, nicknamed Will, first suggested the bold plan of ripping off his own suppliers. On March 28th of 2020, one of the members of the Liverpool firm, who cannot be named for legal reasons, sent a message to Caswell, who used the EncroChat handle Lynx Basil. Caswell was asked if he could sell for cash. This message was a request for Caswell to source any customers willing to buy cocaine for cash rather than on credit. Caswell said he would look into it and asked how much the group was selling for. He was told £41,000 and that it would have to be picked up from Liverpool. Using his EncroChat device, Caswell then messaged Jason Cox, who used the handles Nova Belt and Urban Rifle. They both started planning to rob the Liverpool organised crime group. They began to take real steps to further that plot, to put trackers on vehicles, to undertake a number of reconnaissance visits, to look at where the stash house was, the amounts, and when best to strike. In messages recovered from EncroChat, Caswell described a member of the Liverpool gang they went on to rob as a horrible expletive. In a message to Jason Cox, Caswell added, "If we get his driver, do you think he will be the man with access to the gaff with it all in?" Chillingly, he added, "I would even be up for killing him if needs be." The group planned the robbery carefully, taking 5 reconnaissance trips to work out the movements of their target and keep an eye on how much cocaine was being delivered. But the surgical mask dropped by Monks Gorton was tested for DNA, and the EncroChat messages shared by all the main players clearly outlined their roles in the heist. Police arrested Craig Cox at his home address. Lee, Jason and Richard Caswell went on the run. Caswell was arrested in a £1 million rented apartment in the luxury Centurion building on Chelsea Bridge Wharf in London. In the apartment, police found £98,000 in cash stuffed in a hold-all, as well as an expensive Rolex and a passport. Lee and Jason Cox fled to Spain. When police closed in on their car, they tried to smash their way out of a traffic jam. They were arrested at the scene. The fallout when the facts became known was seismic in the underworld, leading to arson attacks at properties linked to the Cox family, which were reported to the Greater Manchester Police. Additionally, Caswell was slashed while in prison in Manchester. Caswell did not cooperate with an investigation into that incident. In court, lawyers for both Caswell and Jason Cox said their clients had become targets since their roles in the robbery were made public. The Cox siblings, along with another brother, Lee Cox, all of Oakland's Road in Salford, also admitted being involved in large-scale drug dealing, being linked to more than 20 kilos of cocaine and 50 kilos of cannabis. Jason Cox was jailed for 14 years and 8 months after pleading guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and cannabis, conspiracy to possess criminal property, and conspiracy to commit robbery. Craig Cox was sentenced to 13 years and 6 months in jail after also pleading guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and cannabis, conspiracy to possess criminal property, and conspiracy to commit robbery. He also admitted 2 breaches of a serious crime prevention order. Lee Cox has been sentenced to 8 years for admitting conspiracy to supply cocaine and cannabis, and conspiracy to possess criminal property. Richard Caswell, from the Kirkdale area of Liverpool, was jailed for 7 years for conspiracy to supply cocaine and diamorphine, possessing criminal property, and conspiracy to commit robbery. In a chilling twist, the EncroChat messages between Caswell and Jason Cox showed that they were also planning to kidnap the daughter of a rival gang boss using a fake police car. They were hoping to make £2 million from the ransom. This vicious gang acted like complete loose cannons, robbing rivals and plotting a high-profile kidnapping. They thought they'd planned the perfect crime when they robbed the Liverpool stash house, but didn't count on leaving behind DNA evidence and having the police crack their encrypted phone messages. Although the gang have been punished by the UK legal system, they better be looking over their shoulders for a long time to come, as the firm they robbed will be coming for them. It's not a matter of if, but when. Thank you for joining us today on Crime Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed this story. If you want to hear more crazy stories from the world of crime, please subscribe to the channel.